Hello and happy Super Bowl Sunday to everybody out there. I'm Kurt Finn, and this is a special Super Bowl Top 5 edition. All right. I hope everybody has a great Super Bowl. Super Bowl Sunday is always such a great time to get together with friends and family. But, Super Bowl 60 today, never forget the big game today against the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. Should be a great game. Always look forward to Super Bowl Sunday. So today I'm going to give you my top 5 Super Bowl teams to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to jump right into it. Number 1, I'm going to go with the 1966 Green Bay Packers. This Super Bowl was played on January 15th of 1967, where the Green Bay Packers had beat the Kansas City Chiefs 35-10 in Los Angeles, California at Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. As a Bear fan, why do I put the Packers at number 1? Well, it's quite simple. It was Super Bowl I. They won the very first Super Bowl. Back then, it was the NFL against the AFL, the National Football League against the American Football League. The AFL was up and coming. Lenny Dawson was a losing team, Hank Stram. But this is why we call it the Lombardi Trophy, because of Vince Lombardi. The Packers would go on to win both Super Bowl I and II. These teams were incredible, chock full of Hall of Famers. Number 1, Bart Starr. The guy was incredible, one of the best quarterbacks of his time. And, of course, the great coach, Vince Lombardi. They had a great running back room of Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor. Their offensive line, Jerry Kramer. I mean, there was just so much on this team. Their defense was incredible. Ray Nitschke. You just had so much talent on this team. Max McGee, the wide receiver. The old story about him drinking all night long and then having to play because Boyd Dollar had gotten hurt, something like this. And went in on a no sleep, a little bit of a buzz on, and went out and made a couple of big catches in that game. But Super Bowl I, Green Bay Packers, the 1966 Green Bay Packers. And then again for me, number 2, it's got to be the 85 Bears. And this team was just so dominant. They only gave up 10 points in the whole playoff run. This was the Super Bowl was played on January 26, 1986 in the Louisiana Superdome, of course, 40 years ago, where the Bears would go on to beat the New England Patriots 46-10, and the great Mike Ditka coaching would get his first Super Bowl, and the Bears would be back as champions for the first time since, I believe, 1963. But the Chicago Bears team, of course, full of Hall of Famers themselves, the great Walter Payton on offense. And you had so many great guys on the offensive line. They had a great offensive line. Jay Hilgenberg, Mark Bortz, Tom Thayer, Colbert, all these guys. Just an amazing team. The great Jim McMahon, the punky QB. But it was the Bears' 46 defense that was so dominating. Like I said, only giving up 10 points throughout the whole playoff run. But, the great Richard Dent, Steve McMichaels, Dan Hampton, William Perry, the great linebackers of Wilson, Singletary, and Marshall. Great coverage. The great Gary Fensick. This team was just amazing. Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka, just the great offensive and defensive coaches. And this team, the Bears, 85 Bears, at that time, nobody had beat the crap out of anybody like that. But 46-10, the Chicago Bears, 85 Bears have got to be my number 2 team. And number 3 for me has got to be the 1972 Miami Dolphins. And this game was played on January 14th, 1973, against the Washington Redskins in Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, Los Angeles, California. And what makes the 1972 Dolphins so special, other than the great Don Shula Hall of Famers that they had on this team? Well, that was a team that were undefeated. The undefeated Miami Dolphins in 1972, that team will forever live in history. You had that great running back room of Larry Zonka and Jim Kick and Mercury Morris. You had the great Bob Greasy. In that defense, they called them the no-name defense. Donnie Anderson, Jake Scott. You had the great Manny Fernandez, and just so many just great defensive players on that team. They called them the no-name defense. Nick Buoniconti, Hall of Famer. There were just so many guys on that team. The funny thing about that team is they had the chance to go 16-0 and win the game 16-0. But the Garo Yepremian's gaff is one of the biggest plays they had. But I got to go with number 3, the 1972 Miami Dolphins, due to the fact that they were undefeated, and of course the great Don Shula. And number 4, I've got to go with the beginning of a great dynasty. This would be the 1974 Pittsburgh Steelers. And this Super Bowl was played on January 12th, 1975. It was the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Minnesota Vikings at the New Orleans Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, Louisiana. This was the last time they would be outdoors. It would move to the Superdome. But this game was played, against the Vikings, who had went to the Super Bowl 4 times in that era and just never were able to get over the hump. But, Chuck Nolan is a great team. Many Hall of Famers. You think about the great Terry Bradshaw, the original TB12, one of the greatest to ever do it. Why I put this team number 4? Because it was the start of a great dynasty. The Steelers would go on to win 4 Super Bowls on the strength of that amazing defense. So many Hall of Famers, with Jack Lambert and Jack Ham, and Shell and Webster and Wagner and all these guys. You had the great Mean Joe Green. You had L.C. Greenwood, Dwight White, all these guys, the Hall of Fame, the Steel Curtain defense. This team would go on to win 4 Super Bowls. And that's why I got him at number 4, because this was the beginning of such a great dynasty. In an era to win 4 Super Bowls, and for an era for Terry Bradshaw to play like he did, I think he's one of the best to ever do it. I think the Steelers are one of the best teams. And it was a great dynasty to start. And, so many Hall of Famers and such a great team. 4 Super Bowls in that era was incredible. So, I've got to go with that Pittsburgh Steeler team. What a team. And that's why they're at number 4, that Pittsburgh Steeler team. The 74 Pittsburgh Steelers. And for number 5, because along the same lines as that Pittsburgh Steelers team, is the 2001 New England Patriots. This Super Bowl was played on February 3rd, 2002. It was the Patriots against the Rams. The Patriots would win 20-17. This would be played in the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. But why I picked that team, of course, it's another great team that began another great dynasty. The New England Patriots would just go on to dominate. Didn't really matter who they had on their team. They had Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. But you had so many other guys, Nick Vinatieri. You had, all these Hall of Famers would go on to make, Randy Moss would eventually play for them. But it didn't really matter who they had at that time. Tom Brady would just throw the ball to you, and you'd catch it. And Bill Belichick, of course, they'll eventually be in the Hall of Fame. But the combination of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady winning so many Super Bowl rings together and just, dominating that era, the New England Patriots. And as much as I hated to watch it, I've got to give them credit. They were just so damn good. Nobody played the game like Tom Brady. I think he's obviously one of the greatest, if not the greatest. I put him up there to ever do it. I give credit where credit is due. Bill Belichick, Tom Brady went on to win many Super Bowls together. But, I've got to give it up to that Super Bowl team, the 2001 New England Patriots, because they would just go on to do so many great things. And this was just the beginning of it. A couple of teams I'd like to give honorable mentions to that did not make my top 5 list, of course. Number 1, I've got to go with the 76, the Oakland Raiders. And why I say that, because that was the first Super Bowl team for when I was born. You had the great Kenny Stabler. John Madden won his first game. Those Oakland Raider teams were so cool. They would play in the championship and lose the championship many times to the eventual Super Bowl champion. But they were in so many great games, the Sea of Hands, or just so many neat games that those Oakland Raider teams played in. And they had so many characters, Matuzak and Hendricks, and just so many, Dr. Death. You had Phil Villapiano. You had so many neat characters on that team. Freddie Bolitnikoff, Cliff Branch. It was just such a Jim Otto. Art Shell. I mean, those teams were great. But the 76 Oakland Raiders, I give a special honorable mention to. And I've also got to go with the 1969 New York Jets, because they were the first American Football League team to win. They beat the Baltimore Colts, and that was just a huge great game. The great Joe Namath, Broadway Joe. Joe was just such a character, and you really had to give it to him. The guy was so neat. but they weren't on the list for me. But it was such a neat thing for the AFL to win, and so I got to go with the Jets as an honorable mention that I didn't put up there. But that's it. My top 5 teams. It'd be the '66 Green Bay Packers with Vince Lombardi. Of course, they win their first Super Bowl, and that's why we named the Lombardi Trophy. The '85 Bears, just because they were so goddamn dominating. There was just nothing like it. You'd never seen a Super Bowl like that before. The way they just shut them down. It was such an amazing time for those '85 Bears and Mike Ditka. And of course the '72 Dolphins, the undefeated Dolphins with Don Shula, that they would go on to win another Super Bowl. But Don Shula, of course, one of the all-time leading wins leader and coaches. Just so amazing that we have this team undefeated, the '72 Dolphins. It's just something that will go down in history. And of course, the number 4 team, I've got to go with the '74 Pittsburgh Steelers because it was the start of a great dynasty. Terry Bradshaw and those great teams, the Steel Curtain. To win 4 Super Bowls in that era was, such a feat. It was such a different era, such a different time. And, I got to give it up to those Steelers teams. They would go on to just dominate, that Steel Curtain. And Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, just, two of the best to ever do it. And, of course, the 5th team would be the 2001 New England Patriots. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, they're just great. But, the Bradshaw era with the Steelers, they were just so great. But, we go with that team. You go with the Patriots at number 5. They were an awesome team, and they would go on to just dominate, and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. You just, so, when you think about those quarterbacks, you think about Bradshaw and you think about Brady, their dynasties were incredible. But, with Bob Greasy only winning a couple, McMahon only winning one, and the great Bart Starr with the Packers. It was just such, the coaching and the quarterbacks and the defenses and everything for these 5 teams were just incredible. Of course, the '76 Oakland Raiders and, the '69 New York Jets. I got to put those guys up there. Just didn't make my top 5. So I hope everybody has a great Super Bowl and enjoys time with their friends and family. I look forward to the chicken wings. That's one of my favorite. That's my go-to for my snack at a Super Bowl is chicken wings. I like all different types of flavors, but I'm going to go with the bourbon apple or a habanero spicy one. So that's my call for the snacks. My prediction: New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. I think Seattle's defense is just too good. I think with the Bears, I thought the Bears could have beat the Rams. I don't think they would have beat the Seahawks, but I had the Rams picked for the Super Bowl in the beginning of the year, so the Seahawks and their defense really surprised me. I do think Seattle takes this game, and I think it's a fairly low-scoring game, but we'll see out there in San Francisco for Super Bowl 60. But I do think Seattle will beat New England. So while you're looking back on the Super Bowl, I hope you enjoy the commercials. I hope you enjoy the halftime show. I'm always looking forward to that, to see what goes on. But such a neat time, the Super Bowl, such a great time to be together with friends and family. And I always think that the next day should be a national holiday, or maybe move the game to Saturday. I don't know. Whatever you do, wherever you are and whoever you're with, I hope you have a great time and enjoy your Super Bowl. And hope everybody has a great Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. Thanks for tuning in for my top 5 Super Bowl teams as I chose. Have a great Super Bowl. Take care, everybody.